Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Back again. I said I'd be back. For everybody that's coming in, please hit the like button on the way in. I'd really appreciate that. Yep, it's Uncle Claude's After Dark yet again. Well, I guess it is technically the first now. It is after midnight. And as you can see, I have a different topic this particular evening. I wanted to switch it up a little bit because I don't want to be monotonous, talk about the same thing over and over and over again. And I want to have a little bit of fun because this particular topic, I am a music fan, a huge music fan, and of all different genres. But I am a huge fan, obviously, of these two genres, and that is hip-hop and R&B. And as you know, those two genres are definitely not the same as far as the quality and the quantity of it. In fact, I could actually make a case that R&B is considerably worse than hip-hop. Well, what passes as hip-hop nowadays. And to be honest, there are a few artists that I do like in hip-hop today. I mean, I like Rhapsody. I like Joyner Lucas. I'm definitely a fan of his. I'm a fan of J. Cole. But would they crack my top 5 dead or alive? Absolutely not. And that's not a knock on them. Some of it is a generational thing. There is no question about that. But when it comes to R&B, though, I mean, I'm going to be honest. R&B, I'm just not feeling the artists nowadays in that particular genre. I'm just not. I mean, I can tolerate certain artists, but for the most part, as far as R&B is concerned, it is definitely it's on the downside to keep it mild. But I tell you what, I'm going to leave it to the audience also. I will give you definitely my top 5 in R&B and my top 5 in hip hop. And I'm going to start first with the more established genre, which is R&B. Now, before I give my top 5, I'm going to give you my honorable mention. I'll mention 5 artists in R&B that they're on the outside looking in for my particular top 5, but I'm definitely fans of theirs. But I mean, to be a top 5 artist and that's just for me. I mean, obviously everybody's going to have a different list, but these are my honorable mention top 5. And this is just for me. And again, this is a generational thing. And this is in no particular order as far as that, but and I might surprise a few people, but I tried to hit all generations. I mean, at number 10, and again, this is a no really. I'm just saying from 10 to 6. Again, no real particular order. Number 10 for me would be the OJs, because in growing up, I mean, I'm a huge fan, and to me, they're a very underrated group, even despite all the massive hits that they've had, especially during the 70s and early 80s. And to see the two main core of the group still around, still touring. I mean, they're absolutely amazing. I have to put the OJs obviously in my top 10. Again, these are honorable mention. I'm from 10 to 6, and then I'm going to reveal my top 5. But I am a huge fan of the OJs. I respect their longevity and just the fact that they've produced massive hits, especially during the 70s and 80s, of course. So I definitely have to put the OJs there at number 10. At number 9, you know what? I'm going to think outside the box. Well, not really outside the box, but to me, this guy is pretty underrated. And I know he's taken a lot of flack, of course, because of his past relationship with one Halle Berry. But you know what? Eric Benet is one of my favorite artists. He is definitely underrated. He's a wonderful singer. And he has put out some wonderful music. My personal favorite, you know what? That Pretty Baby album is a very underrated album. Very underrated album. It's one of my favorites. It's not my favorite song of all time of his. He's had more than a few. In fact, man, I forgot the name of one of my favorite. Yeah, You're the Only One is probably my favorite song of his. And he's had more than a few songs that I'm a fan of, but You're the Only One I Want. That's the quintessential Eric Benet song, and he's number 9 on my list. I mean, there are so many, and I'm leaving out a few. Listen, my honorable mention could go. I could go like 20 deep, but I'm gonna keep it at 10 for now. My number 8 all time, and I guess, I mean, this is obviously a generational thing, but also, let's face it, this guy, even though I'm going to just put the entire group guy in there at number 8. I mean, Aaron Hall, Teddy Riley, of course, Damian Hall. And listen, Teddy Riley is definitely a top 5 producer all time. And if he's not in your top 5, well, I have to question your top 5, because Teddy Riley, when you look at hip hop and R&B, I mean, his influence is amazing. But Aaron Hall, listen, if you remember when R. Kelly came in, and I understand it's sort of taboo to even mention the name R. Kelly nowadays, but when you think about his influence in R&B and pop music in particular, also, listen, he stole his entire style from Aaron Hall. Let's face it, when R. Kelly first came on the scene, he literally dressed and acted like Aaron Hall. And let's face it, when you listen to any of Guy's ballads, and my favorite ballad from them is Let's Chill, no question about it. And I like Saying Bye Bye, that was a great song. And Aaron Hall's solo work, definitely. Listen, I Miss You was a huge song for him. And again, I'm a huge Aaron Hall fan. He is not spoken of when it comes to great singers, but Aaron Hall, in his prime, wonderful singer. I mean, he had vocal cord surgery a few years ago, and now he's sounding a little bit better. There were a couple of times where I heard him live. He sounded really shaky. But in his prime, I mean, he could definitely blow. Aaron Hall was a wonderful singer. And of course, when you add that with Teddy's production, and Aaron Hall's a good songwriter also, by the way. So I have to put Guy, the entire group, at number 8. as far as all time R&B. Number 7. And listen, I'm all over the place because I have to, to me, I have to add 70s, 80s, 90s, obviously 2000s, even the 2010s. And this is sort of a nod to my mom when it comes to this next group. The Temptations. And for this particular upload, when it comes to the classic Temptations, and a lot of people will tell you this, there's only one real set of Temptations. And if you saw the miniseries about the Temptations, you remember David Ruffin getting high in the back of the limo with his manager. I can't even think of the guy's name. But remember, he said, without David Ruffin, Temps ain't nothing. But, and obviously that wasn't the case. The Temptations were a great group even without David Ruffin, but they were not the same group without David Ruffin. David Ruffin as one of the leads. Because if you remember, real Temptation fans know that even though David Ruffin sang a lot of lead vocals on their biggest hits, if you remember also, the late, great Eddie Kendricks, one of the silkiest tenors of all time, he sang a lot of lead for the Temps as well. In fact, The Way You Do the Things You Do, that was strictly Eddie Kendricks, and of course, the classic Just My Imagination, that was the Eddie Kendricks lead. In fact, that was the last big lead that he did before he left the Temptations. But I know in my mother's mind, God rest her soul, the Temptations are David Ruffin, Eddie Kendricks, Otis Williams, Melvin Franklin, excuse me for that slip up, and Paul Williams. Those are the Temptations, if you were to ask my mom. The rest of those guys, they were fill-ins as far as she was concerned. But those 5 guys were the Temptations. Now, I'm not going to take away from Mr. Dennis Edwards because he had a wonderful voice and he did this thing too. And let's face it, some of the biggest hits the Temptations ever had. Listen, Dennis Edwards definitely had a hand in that. And ironically, Dennis Edwards and David Ruffin actually got along pretty decent, which you would think wouldn't be the case considering he was the guy who took his place. But when you look at their great history, I mean, you talk about classic hits. I mean, My Girl alone, that song just stands the test of time. I mean, that's definitely a top 10 single of all time. When you add Smokey's production, David Ruffin's voice, I mean, say what you want about David Ruffin, he could sing, man. I remember Marvin Gaye himself said that he had a gruffiness in his voice, a toughness in his voice that he wished he had. And that's high praise because Marvin Gaye, listen, don't even want to. We'll speak more about him as we go further. I sort of tipped my hand on my top 5, but the Temptations definitely are there at number 7. And rounding out the outside looking in, as far as my top 5 R&B singers, And this is a tough one. And I know a few people are going to be like, well, why isn't he in your top 5? Well, see, my top 5, these are people. It's not just the influence as far as their particular, just the genre of R&B is concerned, but they're in my top 5 because there are certain songs of theirs that either me, myself, or me and my wife could look at and be like, wow, there have been plenty of moments with these songs in mind. And that's sort of how these guys have gotten into my top 5. But on the outside looking in, at number 6, and this was close. This was really, really close. But I got to put this particular person at number 6. And again, this was a tough one. And there are a lot of people who are going to say that this person is a little bit overrated. But you have to listen, I have to be fair. And there are a lot of people who think that they're underrated as a singer. But listen, as far as I'm concerned, this guy is the greatest producer of all time. And I understand that he stopped making hits in the late 80s. But listen, if Berry Gordy is the king of Motown, and I understand that Marvin Gaye is the prince of Motown, well, there wouldn't be Motown without Smokey Robinson. That's just all there is to it. And he's my number 6 guy. And he's on the outside looking in because, I mean, when it comes to Smokey and the Miracles, that's one thing in his solo stuff. But I'm going to be honest, I preferred Eddie Kendricks over Smokey as far as their vocals. But when you look at all of the hits that he wrote, not just for himself, but for others, I mean, I couldn't leave Smokey out of the top 10, but for me personally, I couldn't put him in my top 5 because the artists I have ahead of him, I mean, for me, I mean, they were closer to my heart. They just were. And it's not a knock on Smokey, of course. I mean, he's a living legend. And we have to hold on to our legends, no question about it. But Smokey Robinson, for me, is number 6. And now I'm going to start with top 5 in R&B. And number 5 for me, and this is for me, again, this is my list. Obviously, everybody's going to have a different list. Please, again, hit the like button on the way in. I really would appreciate that. Number 5 to me is Maxwell. Yeah, Maxwell. And I'm going to be honest. And I'm a huge Maxwell fan, always have. He is the king of neo soul. Everybody talks about Mary J. Blige being the queen of hip hop soul. And she is, no question about that. And her influence is undeniable. But for me, Maxwell is a much better artist and singer. It's not even close. And of all his songs, Fortunate, which R. Kelly wrote for him, is a wonderful song, no question about it. Ascension, Don't Ever Wonder. But my favorite Maxwell song of all time is Lifetime. You hear that song, you I know that's the anthem. I mean, that's a special song for me and my wife, no No question about it. That particular song, Lifetime. That song comes on, everything stops in the house. I'm gonna just put it like that. I mean, even the very first line of the song, when Maxwell sings, I was reborn when I was broken, sets off the entire song. And obviously, I didn't sing it as well as Maxwell. I mean, nobody could, but Maxwell is number 5 on my list of top 5 R&B artists of all time. Number 4, for me, and that's a tough one. And listen, you could put him higher if you want. But for me, number 4 is R. Kelly. And again, this is a generation thing too, because listen, he carried the 90s from the mid 90s to the mid to late 2000s. R. Kelly was the man. Anybody that says otherwise is full of shit. That's all there is to it. When you look at when he started with the Public Announcement, when you look at the 12 Play album, all the way, I will say, through the Chocolate Factory album, nobody was putting there is to it. And R. Kelly has had several signature songs. I get it. I mean, obviously, Your Body's Calling Me is one of those. Bump and Grind, of course. But if you're looking for the one signature song for me, when talking about R. Kelly's music, I'm not talking about the outside stuff. I'm just dealing with his music. Step in the Name of Love, the remix, the video where he's on a boat, that is his signature song in my estimation. I mean, the man, say what you want, the man can sing. And I tell you what, when get a little saucy, start dancing around, start singing that song, I tell you what, that is the cookout song. Step in the Name of Love Volume 2. And I have to put R. Kelly at number 4 on my list of R&B singers. Number 3. Well, hey, Due Process, how you doing? Yeah. That is a slept on song, Due Process, no question about it. And I tell you what, that that was a great album. That Black Summer's Night album. That's an underrated album of his. And it's good to see you. No question about it. That is an underrated album. But yeah, Maxwell, that's one of my guys, no question about it. But going back to R. Kelly, man, R. Kelly's that's listen, you can say what you want about him. He's the man. He held it down for a long time. Now let me go back to number 3. See, I get sidetracked too easy. And number 3 could easily be number 2. I mean, I only have one guy number 1, and we'll get to him obviously shortly. But number 3 for me, yeah, you have to separate the man from the music. And listen, this is just for R&B purposes, because when it comes to like all genres of music, Mr. Stevie Wonder is number 3. Do I really have to explain why? I mean, geez. Stevie Wonder, I mean, he's one of the all-time greats. When you look at his body of work, I don't know how many people have a better body of work than Mr. Stevie Wonder. I mean, when you remember when he was little Stevie Wonder, that's one thing. But when he really grew up in the early 70s, the early to mid 70s, when he, I mean, Just Enough for the City. Jeez, I mean, my God. That double album. Oh, man. He's had so many songs. The tribute that he did for Duke Ellington. Oh, yeah, Boogie on Reggae Woman. I mean, and a lot of this, again, is my too, because, I mean, see, my mom, she did a wonderful job in playing so many genres of music, and we had so many of Stevie Wonder's albums. Fingertips. Oh yeah, he's definitely a multi-talented genius. One of my favorites of his is "The World's in Need of Love Today. Don't delay, send yours right away." I mean, that song, my gosh. Obviously the tribute to Duke Ellington, as I mentioned before. Yeah, I listen. Only Stevie can do it. I appreciate that. So many. "Ribbon in the Sky" would probably be my signature song from him. For me, and obviously you could do "I Just Called to Say I Love You." I mean, there's so many. "Superstition." There's so many. I mean, my gosh, we'll be here all night. But for me, "Ribbon in the Sky" is my favorite. And also another one is "When I was riding a rocket and gave me a spark at a half a mile an hour, then you dropped me back down to this cold, cold world." That song, that's one of my favorites too, man. And I can't think of the name right now, so that's why I'm like pretending like I can sing. But Stevie Wonder is my number 3 guy. Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. It's either a Stevie song, a Barry White song, I mean, for my generation and older, or the number 1 guy on my list, and we'll get to him soon. Now, the number 2 R&B singer, and I understand that, yeah, all I do is think about that's a classic. And listen, that you could say that's a signature song of his too. No question about it. Now, number 2 for me, and again, I understand that Mary J. Blige is the queen of hip hop soul, but she's not on my list. Now, we're talking about R&B singers. Now, you could make a case that, and I could have picked any one of these 3 women And listen, I'm a huge Gladys Knight fan, and I could have put her in my top 10 easy. Hell, I could have. Aretha Franklin deserved to be there too. I mean, again, these lists. I mean, they're so. Again, this is for me, and I love both of those ladies, no question about it. They're great. I mean, they're once in a lifetime singers. For me, and I understand that she caught a lot of flack, especially in the beginning. She was singing too many crossover songs, this, that, and the third. Listen, and Aretha could probably outsing her in her prime. I understand that. But there's only one iconic voice, especially for my generation. Yeah, I'm just talking about R&B. And I understand that she did a few pop songs and she crossed over. I get it. But, and I understand that she didn't always sing R&B. I get it. There's only one Whitney Houston, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sorry. And as far as being, listen, Mariah Carey would never be on my list. I can tell you that. And there are going to be a lot of people who say, "Oh well, why did you put her?" Listen, this is my list, okay? And I understand. Like I said, I understand that as far as R&B is concerned, and I can't argue that case. That obviously Aretha and Gladys are more R&B than Whitney. I get it. But listen, Whitney Houston. I mean, Whitney Houston's. She is the iconic voice for our generation. And I'm 50 years old. Listen, if 80s, 90s, early 2000s, Whitney Houston was here. Everybody else in music, especially as far as females, is here. Not even close. I mean, she straight up just, it's no longer Dolly Parton's song anymore. I'll always love you. Just give me that. And listen, oh yeah, first of all, her rendition of the Star Spangled Banner was only topped by one other person. And that's the number one person. And we'll get to that person shortly. Now, if you're wondering, how come Michael Jackson and Prince aren't on this list? That's a whole nother level. And Whitney was on those two guys' level too. She was, whether people want to acknowledge that or not. But see, Michael, Prince, and even Whitney, and you could make a case, I didn't have to put her on the list. Because those three artists there, they're on a different plane. But for me, Whitney has to be the number two person. I mean, even when you look at the stuff that she did after The Bodyguard, I mean, when she redid I'm Every Woman and she showed the graciousness of having Shaka Khan in the video, because back in the day when she was a young girl, she sang background, and that's a little known fact, for Shaka Khan. In fact, if you remember that song Clouds by Shaka Khan, and listen, Shaka could be on this list too. I mean, I'm going to keep it funky. Shaka Khan could easily be on this list. But she had TLC in the video. She had oh yeah, that's how you definitely pay homage, show respect. That's something that's missing in today's music, quite frankly. And not just dealing with our people, but just in general. But Whitney Houston is my number 2 artist. And that takes me to the number 1. And again, it's not Michael. It's not Prince. Obviously, it's not Whitney. You could make a case Barry White could be there. But my number 1 person, my all-time number 1 R&B artist. You know, I mentioned Stevie Wonder at number 3. Stevie Wonder would not be unleashed the way that he was. And I know a lot of people are going to be like, "Damn, you picked him at number 1. Wasn't he a little bit before your time?" Well, actually, when he passed away, I believe I was a freshman or a sophomore in high school. No, it's not Ray Charles. Jeez. I mean, I like Ray Charles, but oh no. My number 1 guy, and there's only one. I understand the way he died was very tragic, but there's only one, Marvin Gaye. Marvin Gaye is the standard of standards. He is my number 1 guy. He is the number 1 go-to guy. He is the game changer of R&B. He is the once and future king. When everybody claims to be the king of R&B, well, and there are several guys that can lay claim to that. But for me, Marvin Gaye is the number 1 guy. And when you look at his career, I mean, because remember, there were basically 2 different parts of Marvin Gaye's career. You look at the clean-cut Marvin Gaye. Oh, listen, it's not even close to process. You already know it. Because when you look at Stubborn Kind of Fellow, Heard It Through the Grapevine, Hitchhike. Now, now, that's before my time. I understand that. But see, Marvin Gaye not only changed music. Remember, Motown, back in the day, they had to sing happy songs. They didn't want to cause any controversy because they basically catered to white America. Let's face it, that's what they did. And it worked for Barry, no question about it. But Marvin Gaye, you know what, everybody talks about Bob Marley. Listen, if it wasn't for Marvin Gaye, there wouldn't be a Bob Marley. And listen, James Brown, when he's saying Black and I'm Proud, that was a game changer too. Don't get me wrong. But what's going on, and Let's Get It On. Those albums, first of all, the song What's Going On, that's for me is the signature song. Because that's a song that shows you Marvin Gaye's genius. That's a song that can be played right now, and it's more relevant right now than when Marvin first sang it. And that's when Vietnam was going on. But when you look at everything that's going on right today, and that is the mark of a genius, because geniuses transcend time and space. And listen, I could have put Prince there, but to me, he's more rock and roll than R&B. And Prince and Marvin Gaye are my 2 favorite artists of all time. Let me put that out there. Michael Jackson is one of my favorites. Don't get me wrong, but Michael Jackson is more of an entertainer than a singer and an artist. Guys like Prince, Marvin Gaye, Stevie Wonder, those are artists. Alicia Keys, you want to put her there? Even though she's not quite there. She's like a couple of notches below those people that I mentioned. And Alicia Keys will be there. I'm not knocking Alicia Keys at all. Not at all. But Marvin Gaye, I mean, when you hear Let's Get It On, nobody sang like that, man. I mean, even songs like and there are certain songs of his that are not played, like Angel. That was a great song. But I mean, he sang, he didn't just sing to us, he sang for us. And that was at a time where it was hard to do. Oh, and ironically, that was his last big hit, and that album was trash. Let me tell you, I'm sorry. I mean, it was on Columbia Records. People and Sexual Healing did change, but the rest of the album was, you gotta be. I mean, he just put that together to pay off the IRS. I mean, let's call it what it is. But Sexual Healing did change the way R&B was sung, no question about it. And ironically, it was that song were the songs that he got his Grammys. That's a joke. You mean he didn't get a Grammy for Let's Get It On and What's Going On? What the fuck were they thinking? I mean, seriously? What songs were better than those? Come on. It took him that long to win Grammys. It was disgusting. But Mercy, Mercy Me, Trouble Man. Oh man. Marvin Gaye's number one, and quite frankly, it's not even close. But he is my number one guy for R&B. Now I said that I was going to do, and you know what? I will do my top 5 dead or alive in hip hop. Yeah, you're absolutely right. That is a perfect analogy there. Due Process. Denzel got the Oscar for Training Day, which was one of his BS roles, to be quite honest with you. Everybody knows he should have won for Malcolm X. It's not even close. Not even close. I mean, the same way that Jamie Foxx channeled Ray Charles, Denzel actually did a better job with Malcolm X. Let's call that out. It wasn't even close. And Jamie Foxx was a hell of a Ray Charles. Don't get me wrong. But I remember when they interviewed Betty Shabazz, obviously the widow of Brother Malcolm, and she spoke on when she saw Denzel step out, where she caught goosebumps. And remember, she laid next to that man. So if anybody's going to know about Malcolm X, it's going to be her. I mean, come on. But yeah, Marvin Gaye is my number one guy. Now, I was going to do my top 5 all-time hip-hop artists. And you know what? I will. What the heck? But I'm going to give my I appreciate that Due Process. I definitely appreciate that. I'm going to do my honorable mention from 10 through 6. My number 10 as far as hip hop, and again, I go back to like the beginnings of hip hop. So my list is going to be all over the place. Now, you won't see that mumble garbage. That's not going to be on here. I can tell you that right now. Please do me a favor, ladies and gentlemen. As you enter in, please hit the like button if you haven't already done so. I really appreciate that. And I appreciate everybody that has stood by me here. I know I'm a little long-winded, but thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Number 10 is going to be Common. I like Common. He's a good artist. He really is. He's very consistent. Now, his best work was with Dilla, God rest his soul. And listen, I could go 50 deep with that. I could go 100 deep. But my favorite Common song is The People, and he filmed that in Brooklyn, downtown Brooklyn, and Bed-Stuy. And I know he's from Chicago, but he also has a place here in New York. People don't realize that. Common would be my number 10 person, and the one he did with Taraji P. Henson in the Testify. Yeah, God rest the soul of the great Jay Dilla, one of the greatest producers of all time. He's a top 5 producer in hip hop. I can tell you that. I mean, he did more production than Dre. That's another story. Dr. Dre's an overrated producer in my estimation. I'm not saying that he isn't great, but a lot of times he didn't even produce. That was one of the falling outs that Tupac had with Dre. But that's neither here nor there. I mean, when you look at how Common came back at Ice Cube in that song, The Bitch in You, notice Ice Cube didn't even come back at him. That's how Common broke him down. Common's a very, I won't say he's an underrated artist anymore. But yes, he is definitely an exceptional lyricist, no question about it. And I have Common at number 10 on my list. All-time hip-hop artists. Number 9. And listen, he could be higher if you want. And now he's not on my top 5 list. But, and I'm just dealing with straight lyricists for the most part. But I have to take into consideration everything. Now, Janet Jackson just got into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And I get it. But let's be fair. Janet Jackson, there's no way Janet Jackson should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame before LL Cool J. That is an absolute disgrace. And I like Janet, don't get me wrong. And I'm not even going to tell you that Janet does not deserve to be there. But let's be fair. There's only 2 reasons that Janet Jackson is in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Number 1, her last name is Jackson. And number 2, in fact, there's 3 reasons. Her last name is Jackson, and the other 2 reasons are 2 names, Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis. And if you don't believe me, look at Janet Jackson's singing career before Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis. Remember that garbage song? Exactly. You don't, because it sucked. She was on Fame. That song, Dream Street, that was a joke. But I tell you what, when she got with Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, it became Control. And you talk about a game changer. Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis are arguably, outside of Smokey Robinson, the greatest producers of all time, period, point blank. And you can thank Prince for that too, if you know your music. But the fact that LL Cool J is not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and let's look at I'm going to look at a couple of the artists, the rap artists who are in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Because let's face it, there are hip-hop artists in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So it would not be a stretch. Yeah, because remember, Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, you're right, Due Process. Prince put them on because, remember, they were a part of the time. In fact, they were called Flight Time because if you remember correctly, Morris Day was not the original lead singer. In fact, Morris Day was the drummer. Alexander O'Neal was the lead singer. And in fact, Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis did some of their best work with Alexander O'Neal. You talk about a singer. Back in his day, now Alexander O'Neal, he looks like shit now. Let me tell you. But I guess the coke got got to him. But Alexander O'Neal could flat out sing. Yep, they got rid of that. Yeah, Alexander O'Neal. Yeah, he was talking shit about Prince. Well, you know how that works out. You get your ass handed to you. You're out of there. Come here, Morris. I mean, he hated Prince. In fact, hell, Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis didn't like Prince too much after Prince fired them. But he fired them to get them basically started. Prince did for Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis what the late Andre Harrell, God rest his soul, did for P. Diddy. That's right. He was asking for money and insulted him. And that gets you a one-way ticket to out of there. And that's exactly what happened to Alex O'Neal. And he had a fine career, especially in the mid to late 80s, of course. The songs that he did with Sherelle. And listen, that's a guy, now he wouldn't have been in my top 10, but he's a very solid artist. Yeah, Andre Harrell, listen, you're a fake. That's one of my favorite songs of his. Criticize. That's my song from Alexander O'Neal. Criticize. Don't criticize my friends. Don't criticize my ideas. Alexander O'Neal, you can tell he's one of those guys. You give him an 8-ball and a white woman, that motherfucker's happy, let me tell you. Alexander O'Neal, boy. He's I'm sorry. I mean, he's from Natchez. He's from Natchez, Missouri. I mean, not Missouri. Excuse me, Mississippi. You can tell he's one of them greasy Negroes. Let me tell you. I'm sorry. Yeah, he didn't really care for our women too much. I'm just saying. But going back to LL Cool J, see how easy I get sidetracked. But I'm actually starting to look up hip hop artists in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And there are several. And the fact that LL is not in there is an absolute joke. But Run DMC, listen, you can say what you want, and I like Run DMC. Yeah, well, I don't blame him for that. Now, in that, Alex is smart because, first of all, the euro is much stronger than the dollar. So, as far as him getting his money, I'm not mad at him with that. Hell, the pound is still stronger than the U.S. dollar. So, and plus, let's face it, if you're an R&B artist, you're more appreciated in Europe than you are in the United States. So, Alex was right in doing that. I mean, he was smart in doing that, to be quite honest with you. But let me get back to the guys who are in the hip-hop artists in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I mentioned Run DMC. Now, again, I'm not saying that Run DMC does not deserve to be there. But when you look at LL's career and you look at Run DMC's career, it's not even close. And Run DMC, obviously, one of the pioneers. No question about it. So, again, they deserve to be there. But when you look at LL's career, and LL, nobody's had a career like LL Cool J in hip hop. Nobody. When you look, nobody has had that longevity. No one. I mean, when you look at I Can't Live Without My Radio when he started out, and he was about 15, 16 years old. He did I'm Bad at 87. 87, 88, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. The Booming System. And of course, Mama Said Knock You Out. That's when he was at the height of his powers. Now, he put out some duds. That going back to Cali garbage. Oh my God. That walking like a panther. Oh God. I mean, listen, he's put out some duds. But let's face it. Mama Said Knock You Out. Round Away Girl. Please. LL was I Need Love, of course. He was, yes, I was getting there, due process. He definitely changed the game. He was the very first real sex symbol in hip hop, and he helped cross over hip hop, no question about it. He helped make hip hop mainstream. And he still kept his masculinity. He didn't have to put on a damn skirt. So you have to give LL credit for that. But yeah, LL Cool J is my number 9 artist. Now, Run DMC, the Beastie Boys, also in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I understand that. I don't consider them really hip hop. Yeah, that's right. Left Me Lonely. Also, Big Daddy Kane also did a few things for the ladies too. Let's be fair on that. But he wasn't better in that genre than LL. Now, Big Daddy Kane is a better artist than LL, to me. He's more lyrical than LL. It's not even close. Big Daddy Kane, one of the greatest lyricists of all time. Now, he fucked up when he went to that Taste of Chocolate garbage. He OD'd with that. But he definitely is one of the top artists of all time. The other people in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, Public Enemy. Yeah, listen, Raw was one of my favorites. Set It Off when he did that. Oh man. Public Enemy and NWA, and there's only one solo artist in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and that's Tupac. Well, now Biggie, excuse me, I'm wrong. Biggie just got added to the Hip Hop Hall of Fame. He went in the same year as Janet Jackson. But yeah, Public Enemy was let in 2013. I thought Grandmaster Flash and the Furious 5 were in there too. I really thought that they were there too. Yeah, they are. In fact, they are. Grandmaster Flash and the Furious 5 were actually the first rappers to be inducted in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I get it because the Message is the biggest game changer in hip hop history. That and Eric B for president. I get it, but they had nowhere near the career that LL has had. Not even close. Not even close. But I have LL at number 9 on my list of all-time hip-hop artists. At number 8, and listen, if you want, you could rank them higher or low. I mean, again, this is just my list, of course. I mean, this is for me. I have to put the aforementioned Big Daddy Kane there. And listen, I would have put Kane higher. He would have been in my top 5 if he had kept going with like he did the first 2 albums of his career. That Taste of Chocolate album left such a bitter taste in my mouth. Excuse the pun. that I just couldn't put him there. But I had to put him on my list because at his, and I know a lot of people are going to disagree with me, and that's fine. Ain't no half-stepping, no question about it. The first two albums of Big Daddy Kane's career, in my estimation, he was lyrically superior to Rakim. Yeah, I said it. That's why I couldn't put him in the top 5 through process. That's Taste of Chocolate LP. Man, I tell you what, I would have went to Brooklyn and kicked the shit out of myself. Why put that shit out, Kane? Damn, man. Nah, that's a little harsh. That's a little harsh. I like Big Daddy Kane. He seems like he's a good brother, man. But I mean, at his apex, listen, yeah, he did, and Big Daddy Kane did too, because they're too busy kissing Eminem's fanny. It makes me sick. Jeez. I mean, you guys are already solidified in hip hop history, and for y'all to still continually kiss this guy's ass is disgusting. But Big Daddy Kane, I tell you what, he's had so many. Yeah. He really, both of them did. Not only Rakim, but Big Daddy Kane bowed down to him too. And please, when you get a chance, Google that up. I was very disappointed with both Big Daddy Kane and Rakim. It's really disgusting. But lyrically, man, Another Victory, great song. Young, Gifted, and Black. Wow, Big Daddy Kane, he was that dude, man. And I have to put him at number 8 on my list. At number 7 on my list, and he's a guy, if you wanted to put him higher, that's fine. But at number 7 on my list, and listen, he could have easily made my top 5 also, but and I know lyrically he's nowhere near these guys, but to me, he gets lost in his influence because he's more of an entertainer. And in fact, if you remember, he was billed as, even though, let's face it, we know that Michael Jackson is, but he was billed as the world's greatest entertainer. And if you're a Harlem cat, you know who I'm talking about. He is the original human beatbox, Doug E. Fresh. Yes, he is my number 7 guy on the list. Because before, and let's face it, Rakim changed the game with Eric B. as president, but before that, Dougie Fresh and the Get Fresh crew, when they did the show, that changed everything in hip-hop. That was one of the biggest game changers of all time. Because you really had to step up your lyrical game. And that had as much to do with Slick Rick the Ruler, who I had a chance to see in concert last year, by the way. And Slick Rick he still puts on a show, let me tell you. Slick Rick. And if, you know what? They're going to have to share that. Dougie Fresh and Slick Rick. And I understand that Slick Rick really wasn't part of the Get Fresh crew. See, Doug was just so smooth, man. Speaking of smooth, I tell you what, Slick Rick, man. There are very few storytellers in hip-hop that's better than Slick Rick, let me tell you. Slick Rick the Ruler, man. Children's Story. Hey, Young World. The Moment I Feared. Man. But I tell you what, when Slick Rick did his own thing, Dougie Fresh was doing this thing all the way to heaven. 7, heaven, all the way to heaven. all the I'm sorry, man. But those two guys, yeah, he was definitely the original storyteller. And boy, no one, the greatest beatbox of all time is Doug Fresh. Biz Markie is second, and he's not close. And I like Biz. Biz is nasty. And I tell you what, I could have put Biz in my top 10 too, but the reason I did this because Big Daddy Kane wrote all his lyrics. So I couldn't put him there. You have to write your own damn lyrics. You have to do that, okay? And I like, yeah, trust me, I popped more than a few cassette tapes in my day due process, let me tell you. No question about it. But I had to put Dougie as number. Dougie and Slick Rick are tied for number 7. Now number 6, just outside the top 5, on the outside looking in, and this was a tough one, and a lot of people are going to disagree with me on this. I have to put Rakim on the outside. I couldn't put him in my top 5 because his career was too jagged. He wasn't consistent enough for me to put him in my top 5. He just wasn't. But I had to put him over those guys because now I did mention that at his prime, Big Daddy Kane was better than Rakim. He was. But Rakim was more consistent than Big Daddy Kane was. That's why I had to put him over Big Daddy Kane. Had to do it. Listen, when Big Daddy Kane was putting out Taste of Chocolate, Rakim was putting out Don't Sweat the Technique, okay? And that was one of the great songs of that era. The 18th Letter is an underrated album. Underrated album. Because now Big Daddy Kane would have a couple of decent singles, and Rakim the same way, because Enough Respect Due was decent. No question about it. But Rakim was better, man. He was better than Big Daddy Kane when you look at that. No, I can't let that Taste of Chocolate. I can't. Listen, he's got to hold that same way LL has to hold Walking Like a Panther and Going Back to Cali. Listen, those songs were garbage, man. That was straight trash. That's why they are where they are, and they're not in the top 5. But Eric B. as president is the biggest game changer. Microphone Fiend was huge, and it was on the second album. Let the Rhythm Hit Him. Obviously, that first album is a top 5 album of all time. I mean, My Melody. Check out My Melody. I mean, please. That song alone, I ain't no joke. I'd rather let the mic smoke. I mean, I got to put Rakim there, man. Because that album was better than the two. See, it's crazy. Like, Big Daddy Kane's first 2 albums, he was lyrically better to me. But the production was better too. But Rakim, and plus, a little known thing too, Rakim bought out Public Enemy, because if you remember Flavor Flav, Dance for Eric B. and Rakim, look at that video, I Ain't No Joke Again. That was Flavor Flav. Listen, he bought out PE. Remember, they're all from Long Island. EPMD is from there too. And that sort of segues into my top 5 of all time. Because at number 5, see, you thought I was going to go And I tell you what, a part of me, EPMD is one of my all-time favorite artists. And before this group came out, they were the #1 rap duo of all time in my estimation. But they are #2 because the #1 duo of all time. Because remember, when it comes to, I can't say Run DMC is a duo because Jam Master Jay is just a bit of part of, if not more of a part, than DJ Run and Daryl McDaniels. Is Run DMC and Jam Master Jay. That's a threesome. But the greatest hip hop duo of all time is not EPMD. It used to be. But once Outkast came out, they are my #5 guys. Andre 3000, Big Boy. If it weren't for them, Atlanta would be garbage in hip hop. They would have no say. Zero. Period, point blank. Nothing. And now Ludacris definitely held up his part for Atlanta. I give Atlanta their props. Little John, the East Side Boys, the Yin Yang Twins, the Young Bloods. I give them their props. But if it weren't for Outkast, none of that shit would be going on. Man, Due Process, I tell you, you've been rolling with me all night. I appreciate you, man. Man, first of all, me and you, your sister and your cousin too, got me on that. Players Ball. And that was before Speaker Box, The Love Below. Forget it. That is one of the great double albums of all time. The Rosa Parks song, that is my shit right there. Man, Outkast. Idlewild was an underrated movie too, let me tell you. That was an underrated movie. You get a chance to watch that movie again. Yo, they were breaking some stuff down. Andre 3000 by himself is a top 10 rapper. Big Boy is an underrated dude too. I tell you what, that purple joint, man. Yo, Killer Mike looked like a fool going against them. Hey, listen, Andre 3000 so ahead of the curve, man. Man. Love Outkast. They're my #5 artists, hip hop artists of all time. At #4, and listen, I could have put him higher, but I have to put him at #4 for the very reasons because he's not always consistent. Nas Escobar is #4 for me. Yeah, you're right. That's when each coast actually had distinct sounds. No question about it, Due Process. Illmatic, you could make an argument that Illmatic is the greatest album of all time. And he will probably never, ever outdo that album. And that is not necessarily a bad thing because a lot of artists will never outdo their first album. And Stillmatic was a very good album. But see, to be fair, It Was Written was probably his second greatest album, then Stillmatic. But he was not consistent. But Nas at his best. And plus another problem I have with Nas is when he does collaborations, to me, he's never the best artist. But when he does his albums, he definitely does his thing. Lyrically, he beat Jay-Z when he dropped Ether. He beat him. But to me, he lost the war when he signed with him. And that's just my opinion. but I definitely have to put Nas there at number 4. I mean, my favorite song of his is Nas's Like. When you know what, when he does shit with DJ Premier, another top 5 producer in his own right in hip hop history. I mean, he's just at another apex. Yeah, he disappointed me signing Jay. And let me tell you something, Jay-Z's not in my top 5. I can tell you that right now. You notice he's not in my top 10 either. And listen, I'm not going to tell you Jay is garbage. He's not. Jay-Z has had a wonderful career. It's really not a knock on it. I'm talking about lyrically. Listen, he's just not as strong as those guys. Now, he's had a great career, no question about it. I couldn't put him over those 10 guys. I just couldn't do it. I couldn't. But Nas definitely. And I tell you what, if you have the Stillmatic album, you want to break down Nas perfectly, that song Second Childhood, that's the best song on the album. And remember, that album had Ether. Nas is number 4 on my list. Number 3 on my list. You know what? It's going to be another tie. Now, yeah, you definitely do. And that's why Nas is a genius, because that is genius level stuff when you can go back and hear something like, wow, that's more relevant now. Now, I have to put Biggie Smalls up there. But it's going to be a tie between Biggie Smalls, the Notorious B.I.G., because he had such a short shelf life, unfortunately. But I couldn't take away, when you talk about longevity in hip-hop and you talk about, you know, the far-reaching career that he's had, I have to put Ice Cube there. He's tied with Biggie Smalls in my top 5. I mean, you look at Ice Cube stuff with NWA. Then you look at his first album, America's Most Wanted. Death Certificate. You look at his EP, Kill It Will. He is a huge reason why West Coast hip hop is what it is. Now, if you want, I could have put Snoop, but Snoop wasn't shit without Dre. Let's call it what it is. Snoop without Dre was garbage. If it weren't for Pharrell, Snoop Dogg was hurting. Let me tell you, he was hurt. But no way I could put him over Cube. Couldn't do it. Cannot, will not do it. And Biggie only had 2 albums, and one was dropped after he died. But he definitely helped bring the East Coast back. That's why I had to put him there. Now, I could have put the Wu-Tang Clan there too, but that group is massive. I could have put them in my top 5. I should have put them in my top 10 if you want to be really technical. If you want to be fair and say, damn, you could have put, but to me, they weren't consistent enough either. I mean, there's so many layers to them. But when you look at Ice Cube's career, and there's a black thing over my device, so I can't see all of the mentions right now. But Ice Cube, You look at today, when you look at that first album, America's Most Wanted, when you look at Death Certificate, Check Yourself Before You Wreck Yourself. When you look at Give Me That Beat, Fool, that Jacket for Beats. Listen, of course, Biggie. Now, and I like both of them. I like Tupac and Biggie. And obviously, I was fortunate enough to know that these guys were huge when they were alive. It's not, when you speak to the younger generation, these guys wouldn't have been as big if they hadn't died early. Now, that's not true. They were huge before they passed away. That's all there is to it. And unfortunately, they did help bring about the East Coast, West Coast garbage. And they were pawns used, of course, excuse me. They were used by P. Shitty and Suge Knight. They were used by them. No question about it. But lyrically, off the top of his head, Biggie was way better than Tupac. It's not even close. If you had to think, do something off the top of the head, freestyle, Biggie was a much better freestyler than Pac. It's not even close. The difference is pen to paper, Pac was infinitely better. It's not going to be like, yeah, he's doing his thing. Tupac made you think. And Tupac broke down what was going on. And he sort of let you in to what and how he was thinking. And that's the difference. But Biggie Smalls was the closest song to me that Biggie came to Pac status was Sky's the Limit, which is my favorite song of his. Because he definitely did his thing in that song. That was a tremendous song. And I like Give Me the Loot. I liked a lot of Biggie stuff, no question about it. But and listen, after IQ put out Friday, he was never the same lyricist. I get it. And it's good to see how he's speaking out during this time. Yeah, that's my favorite joint. Today is a good day. It's one of my favorites of Ice Cube. And also, little boys and girls, they all love me. Come sit on the lap of ICE. That is one of my favorites, the ghetto nursery rhymes off of America's Most Wanted. That was, listen, man, there was a stretch where Cube was my favorite artist. He's definitely one of my favorite West Coast artists of all time, and he and Biggie Smalls are tied at number 3. At number 2, and I could have put him at number 1. I could have, but I couldn't put him over my guy at number 1. My number 2 hip hop artist is Tupac. I mean, Tupac Shakur. Tupac is more relevant now than he was when he was alive. And he was the most controversial dude in hip hop when he was alive, bar none. He was. And he was, I mean, when you look at even Brenda Got a Baby, he was doing his thing back then. But, and ironically, my favorite song from Pac isn't Hit 'Em Up, and that's a great one, and he shut down Junior Mafia with that. Um, that Machiavelli album, tremendous. All Eyes on Me is the greatest double album of all time. Yeah, I said it. And listen, number 2 is Outkast double album. But the number 1 double album of all time is All Eyes on Me. My favorite song from Pac is Shed So Many Tears because he knew he wasn't going to live long. He knew it. He definitely knew it. But there's just so many great songs of his. The Way It Is. I mean, his stuff that was released after he passed away. What you won't do, you do for love. You've tried everything, but you won't give up. Yo, that's one of my joints right there, man. Sucker for Love. To Live and Die in LA. I mean, I ain't mad at you. There's so many great Tupac songs. The shit he did with his Thug Life crew, Outlaws. And he had one of my favorite songs of his didn't get a lot of airplay. Bury Me a G is probably my second favorite song of his. And he had that line, and I'm sorry, I don't want disrespect. You know me, I'm not into disrespecting the ladies, but I knew that he was the man when he said, I'm living a thug life, hardcore hustler. Just because I fucked her don't mean I trust her. He was, I had to put him as my number 2 guy. Because unless you call that woman your wife, I mean, I hate to say it, man. Especially living his status. Tupac was, now he wasn't lyrically as strong as Biggie, but listen, I know that word swag, listen, that's one of those words that we as black folks, we don't even want it once they took it. You can keep it. You can have that word. Nobody had the charisma. To this day, they're still looking for the next Tupac. They'll never find it. They can forget it. He is the number 2 guy on the list. Now, my number 1 guy, now I'm talking about as far as hip hop is concerned, and I know a lot of people are going to disagree with that. But again, this is my list, okay? My number 1 hip hop artist of all time. And he has not been relevant for quite some time. I understand that. But when you look at his body of work, and this was without Dude, and listen, he was never the same once he passed away, once he got murdered. And God bless the great Scott LaRock. Yeah, KRS-One is my number 1 artist, my number 1 hip-hop artist of all time. He is lyrically superior to Rakim. He is lyrically superior to Big Daddy Kane. Lyrically superior to all the guys that I mentioned. You can mention Pac. You can mention Biggie. You can mention Nas. Mention whoever the hell you want. KRS-One will murder. Period. Point blank. Lyrically, it's not even close. And there are some other guys that I left off the list, and they could have easily been on my list. Guys like Cool G Rap, very underrated artists. There are some great lyricists. It's not even close. KRS-One is lyrically superior to everybody. I mean, this guy literally lives up to his name. KRS-One. Knowledge reigns supreme over nearly everyone. Criminal-minded. That's right. Yeah, Gaddafi killed shortly after Pac, and he's from East Orange, New Jersey. Remember that? I'm from NEW Jersey. Yeah. God rest his soul also. The greatest album of all time, top to bottom, in my estimation, is Criminal Minded. And to think that Scott LaRock and Ced G, who was part of Ultramagnetic MCs, their production on that album for that time is legendary. And to think that Mr. Magic and the Juice Crew rejected him, South Bronx is still an anthem that you can play. As big as a game changer as Eric B. for President was, I tell you what, you listen to Criminal Minded, when you hear him, that poetry rhyme, because now you're forced to listen to the teacher and the lesson. Classes and sessions so you can stop guessing. KRS-One just blows everybody away. I mean, that album from top to bottom. The Bridge is Over, South Bronx, Poetry, Criminal Minded, Superho. Listen to my 9mm go bang. And then, just when you think that he wouldn't be able to do it without Scott LaRock, By All Means Necessary. I tell you what, I'm still number one. And you know what? If you listen to the original, that's cool. The remix to that, I'm still number one, blows that out the water. And if you get a chance, look that up, play that on YouTube, because he killed MC. He has destroyed more careers than anybody. Ask MC Shan how his career went. And you talk about genius level. Tell me Sound of the Police doesn't mean more here in 2020 than it did when he first put it out. And I tell you what, Criminal Minded, wonderful top to bottom album. Edutainment. Listen to the Edutainment right now. And get back to me and tell me if that album is not more relevant right now. Play House Nigga. Play that album. Play that song. Tell me he's not talking about people like Coon Dance Owens, Jesse Lee Peterson, and people of that ilk. And I tell you what, talk about holding his own. And he brought out guys like Mad Lion. Listen to that song, Spark Madism with Channel Live. I mean, KRS-One. I tell you what, if it's sad that he is not relevant right now, but he doesn't need to be. If he doesn't put out anything else ever, I mean, lyrically, he is superior to every artist you can name. If they interviewed him a couple of years back, he said, you know what? I have a battle rap for any MC that is chart. Doesn't matter who it is. And they tried to compare when Nelly put out that song, I Am Number One. And listen, Nelly's a decent artist. he is nowhere near KRS-One level. KRS-One would eat him for breakfast. It wouldn't even be close. I mean, they were asking other hip-hop artists, well, who would you take, Nelly or KRS-One? They just shook their heads like, Nelly's, man, KRS-One. They asked Ice Cube that. Ice Cube laughed like, man, I hate to be the nigga that follows him. And I tell you what, if you ever see a guy put on a show, KRS-One, KRS-One is that dude, man. He is the greatest hip-hop artist of all time. And it's not even close. And I'm about to end this live stream, but even though he's not in my top 10, I would be remiss if I don't mention, and he's from my hometown of Mount Vernon, New York, but I can't mention hip-hop without mentioning Mr. Dwight Myers, who the world knew as Heavy D. And Heavy D in his own right is one of the great hip-hop artists of all time. And as great as he was as an artist, he was a better person. Rest in peace. Rest in paradise to the late, great Heavy D. And you know what? Rest in peace to Big Pun as well, and all the other artists like Prodigy. I mean, unfortunately, there's so many that we have lost. Sean Price, Phife Dawg. I mean, it's too many of us that we have lost. Tupac and Biggie, of course. So many. Scott LaRock. So many artists we've lost, man. And rest in peace to all those. Rest in paradise to all those that we've lost. In all genres, in all walks of life. Thank you all so much for joining me on this late night live stream. Please make sure to like, share, and subscribe. This is Uncle Claude signing off. Take care, and God bless.